Right. Hello again, everyone. My name is Nipita Paktithanakun from JNP Legal. We are a member of the League of Lawyers from Thailand, and I'm also the secretary of the League. I will be your moderator for this webinar. It is my privilege to welcome you all to the fifth of the League of Lawyers Asia Europe Foreign Investment webinar series. This is your opportunity to listen to two distinguished speakers who shall speak the topic of foreign investments in their respective jurisdictions in both Asia and Europe. You will also have the opportunity to ask questions as well by sending your questions in writing to our chat box, and the questions will be asked at the end of the two presentations. Before we begin, let me take a moment to first introduce the League of Lawyers. The League of Lawyers is an international network of independent law firms across Asia and Europe. We were founded in 2012 by 5 founding law firms with the objective of helping our clients gain access to legal services from a trusted professional wherever in the world they might be needed. Therefore, we have developed our network of what we perceive as globalized lawyers with country-specific expertise. Today, the League serves the needs of our members and clients in 21 jurisdictions across the Asia-Pacific, Europe, and the Middle East. Our board is well represented with members from the UK, Thailand, Switzerland, Germany, and Malaysia. The uniqueness of our network is that members develop very close working relationship with each other so that we are able to refer matters to each other with the confidence that our clients will be well looked after or work together effectively on cross-border or transcontinent matters. Today's webinar is a part of the League's drive to bring value to our members and clients in the face of the global COVID-19 pandemic. And as our law firms have transformed digitally, just like many other businesses, the League has as well. We are therefore proud to present to you today's webinar on foreign investments in Poland and Timor Leste. Without further ado, it gives me a great pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Jan Muszyński, who is an attorney at law at Von Zanzier and Schultz in Poland. Dr. Jan, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Nipita, for this nice introduction. Let me share with you my screen. Hello again from Poland. It's late morning right now in Poznań, and I'm very glad to be here. Thank you for having me here. And yes, as Nipita said, I'm a law attorney at Von Zanzier and Dachowski. We are a law firm based in Poznań, Poland, and Berlin, Germany. So we are both Polish and German law firm. And our focus is actually the foreign investors in Poland, mostly from the EU, but not only. So in the next 15 minutes, I will give you a few insights about investing in Poland. So basically the plan is that in the beginning, I will give you a few basic facts and figures about Poland. Then I will speak a little bit about forms of doing business in Poland and about Poland as an EU member and the foreign investments in Poland connected to this topic, and our domestic rules connected to foreign investments. And in the end, I will give you a few investor tips, let's say, for Poland. So let's begin. On the front screen, you see the skyline of Warsaw. Well, Poland is, for the European circumstances, quite a big country, over 300,000 square kilometers. So we are about the size of Malaysia. The population of Poland is 38 million, which makes us one of the biggest domestic markets in the EU. I think the 5th or the 6th biggest markets in the EU, but also the biggest domestic market in Central Europe. With our GDP of over $640 billion, we are 22nd country in the world. When it comes to purchase price parity, then it's even better. let's come maybe a little bit to the history of Poland. Poland is a Western, when it comes to culture, we are a Western European country, and just after World War II, we went Soviet influence zone. And after 1989, the democratic reforms were started, and our connection to the free market was established again. And the democratic and free market reforms led to first to quite a big unemployment in Poland, but in the end of the day to very good progress in the entire country. And since 2004, we are an EU member. With a little bit difference from the other EU countries, like, for example, Germany or France, we don't have euro. We have Polish zloty, and that's our currency. Polish zloty is right now about €1. It's more or less 4.5 Polish zloty for the moment. Well, a few things about investing in Poland. Where to invest? Where do the foreign investors mostly invest in Poland? Poland is famous for as a manufacturing country. Poland is also considered to be the reservoir of the labor for Europe, let's say, which has its pros and cons, but basically you can consider us as a well-developed manufacturing country with an ambition to be a high-tech country as well. The workforce in Poland is very well educated, and also in terms of foreign languages, we have quite a good knowledge of English, although our national language is Polish, of course. Many world concerns manufacture in Poland, so basically most of the industries are the car parts, white goods, furniture. There are many concerns and our own domestic companies in these areas. We have also a well-developed production of groceries, and also copper mining is quite developed in Poland. We are the biggest or one of the biggest world exporters of copper. And nowadays, Poland is growing in other businesses, mostly in video games. For example, there is a known Polish company that made the game The Witcher. It is CD Projekt. And Poland is also quite strong in IT outsourcing. And important fact for the investor is that EU and Poland has right now there is a COVID recovery plan that involves large investments in green energy and digitalization and improving health system and sustainable transportation. So in the next few years, there will be a lot of money flowing into these industries, and it is maybe important for you to keep it in mind that there will be happening a lot in these areas. So why Poland for the foreign investments? It's the largest Central Europe market, the skilled workforce that I have also mentioned, a very stable bank sector and economy. In fact, Poland was the only EU country that has not been hit by the recession in 2008. We were the only country that had the growth, and we didn't have any decline in our GDP. And also the GDP and the COVID year 2020 was the lowest in the entire European Union. So I think it's a good recommendation also for our economy and the strengths of our economy. And the foreign investors in Poland, there will be also very interesting the special economic zones, which I will refer to a little bit later. And there is also a fun fact that I found out lately, that Poland is considered to be the hub in the EU for the new Silk Road, so for the new railway connection, Asia to Europe. So yes, that's basically the reasons why to invest in Poland. The foreign investments in Poland in 2019 was over 200 billion euros, and it's still growing. And our major partners in the EU are Germany and France and Netherlands. But from the non-EU countries and from Asia, it's mostly Japan and Korea. Just for your information. Well, let's come to the forms of doing business in Poland. If you do not have Polish citizenship and you want to do business in Poland, you have the right to take up and pursue business activity, of course. You can also establish a branch or representative office of your company in Poland to offer and provide temporary services. And if you have a permit of residence, which is not so difficult to get, or any other legal title to stay in Poland, you can start and conduct the business like every Pole and every EU citizen. So you can start your company as depends on the complexity of the business and of the let's say the size of the business. Like in most of the European countries, you can start a sole trader, limited partnership, limited liability company, joint stock company, or a branch or representative office, as I told you. The differences, of course, there are a lot of differences, but mostly the differences are in forms of registration, different requirements when it comes to the capital, different requirements when it comes to taxation and accounting, and when it comes to the liability for obligations arising from as a result of running the business. Yes, maybe important information for you would be that the corporate income tax in Poland, as a rule, is 19%, but there are possibilities to lower it even to 9% under some circumstances for the beginning of the business. And let's come to Poland as the EU member and foreign investments. Well, as a EU member, Poland enjoys benefits, but must also fulfill some obligations. But being an EU member for foreign investors in Poland is actually a great advantage. So the few limitations are not as big as the aid, as the incentives, and as the good side of it. So the EU remains open for the investors, but to respond to today's economic challenges, some safeguards were installed. So the foreign investments are right now have to be screened in the EU. So basically, the investments in the strategic industries like energy, oil and gas, military relevant businesses, healthcare have to be notified when the investment involves a significant participation of a foreign investor. So let's say not EU investor. And the significant participation means it depends on each case, but it's basically more than 20%. The other important thing to know is that the foreign investments are also screened when it comes to the anti-money laundering. So the investor will be checked who is actually the beneficial owner of the investment. But the incentives, as I told you, are much bigger, great, important and significant cash grants and technology businesses and energy efficiency projects and energy from the renewable sources. That's basically right now the focus of the EU, because the goals of the EU right now are getting more green, digital, and equal when it comes to the equality on the labor market. Poland and foreign investments. As I told you in the beginning, there are some limitations on the EU level. So the EU level is like the roof of the Polish law system, and then we have also our domestic rules. Yes. So there is a problem with. Let's come to the limitations on the Polish ground. So we have the already mentioned EU level with limitation, and we have also a few our domestic limitations. The domestic limitation that is important to bear in mind is maybe the purchasing of agricultural land. The purchasing of agricultural land is for a foreigner is not easy in Poland, but when it comes to other land for investments, it's not a big problem. Also, foreign investments in Poland are being screened, and if foreign investor simplifying not from the EU want to invest in Poland in strategic sectors like energy, chemical industry, healthcare, military relevant industry, they have to count with restrictions such as the need to obtain some permits for acquisition of controlling shares. On the other hand, there are many opportunities for foreign companies to obtain financial support for projects in Poland, both from the EU and from the domestic sources. And various sources and types of support may be available depending on the scope of the project. Therefore, when considering a new investment in Poland, it is just important for each case to be analyzed individually. The amount of aid depends on the region in which you invest in Poland. So in the rural areas of eastern Poland, the incentives are and the aid is a little bit bigger than in big cities or in western Poland. I have already mentioned the special economic zones, which are very interesting for foreign investors. So companies investing in Poland are able to benefit from corporate income tax exemption for business activities within the special economic zones. And the economic zones were created in the middle of the 90s to cover selected parts of Poland where companies can operate on preferential terms and conditions. This type of support is also a type of regional aid, and it's available based on special economic zone permit. The special economic zones are about to cease to exist in the end of 2026, but it is very probably that they will exist a little bit longer, or a few years longer, because it is a great possibility to combat the unemployment in some regions, and for the investors to just to have the tax exemptions. And There are also many government grants that can be obtained by the foreign investors, especially again, like in the EU, when it comes to the green businesses. So the energy efficiency, renewable energy sources, that's a big thing in Poland, and you can get a lot of grants in this, and also for research and development. There are several tax reliefs, like for example real estate tax relief, or you can also deduct from the tax base gross wages of employees, and there are some other significant advantages for the foreign investors. So a few tips for you as foreign investors. Just first step will be I would recommend you to see the Polish Investment and Trade Agency website. There are a lot of information about investing in Poland. It's a state agency, and you can find there more insights just from what I have presented today. And well, let's say my message of this presentation is that you just have to come to Poland and have a look around and feel the business, how it is here, and do not hesitate to contact us, and we can help you with shaping of your business in Poland. We will be very happy to assist you. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Jan, for an interesting presentation. In the interest of time, let us move on to our second esteemed speaker, Mr. Sebastião Bernay, who is a lawyer at CRA law firm in Timor Leste. Sebastião, could you please enlighten us on the Timor Leste side?
My presentation will sound so boring compared to Dr. Jan's presentation, because I liked it very much, but here I go. So in a nutshell, I'll try to say as much as I can in minutes, or 20 minutes max. So this is the map, just to show you the location of Timor-Leste on the Southeast Asian environment. So it's a relatively small country on the tip of Indonesia. This is the picture that pops up in my mind when I think about Timor. So have long beach landscapes with coconut trees and beautiful mountains. The country, the capital is Dili. The territory is pretty, just relatively small, 15,000 square kilometers, but it's very diverse. The main languages are Tetum. First language is Tetum. The second language is Portuguese, still an heritage from the Portuguese colonization. And then English is spoken in all institutions too. And then there are some traditional local languages on the districts. The population 1.42 million. And this is the starting point of Timor. We must always have in mind that Timor just had its independence in 2002. So in terms of investment, this is the first perspective you must have. You are dealing with a country that is pretty much starting everything. Everything is starting. The water supplies are already settled by the state, but there are business opportunities in the basic sectors. So it's even exciting to feel that you are helping to build a country from scratch almost. But we will talk about that a little bit later. So concerning foreign investment, the first thing you must have in mind is that Trade Invest Timor-Leste is the agency, the state-owned agency, supervised by the government, that receives all the foreign investors and helps them in many ways. First, to benefit from tax and customs reductions. land and a special land ownership regime, and we will see why it is so special now. On what concerns to tax, first I'm going to talk about tax. On what concerns to tax, this is not a very common regime here. So in terms of corporate tax, a legal person it is very important the criteria of residence. So a legal person is considered resident in Timor-Leste where it is incorporated, formed, organized, or established in Timor-Leste. Timor-Leste resident companies are taxed on worldwide income, and non-resident entities generally are taxed only on Timor-Leste sourced income. Taxation of dividends. So dividends from Timor-Leste companies are exempt income from Timor-Leste residents and are not tax deductible for the payer. In terms of capital gains arising from alienation of assets are subject to 10% corporate income tax. And then the general rate of corporate income is 10%. So now on what concerns to withholding tax, dividends can range up from 0 to 10%. Interest, there is no interest tax, 10% on royalties, 10% on rents, 10% on prize and winnings, and then some special regimes, smaller rates for construction, air and sea transportation, and mining. Interesting solution is there is no capital duty, no payroll tax, no real property tax, social security is at a rate of 6%, no stamp duty and no transfer tax. This is concerning companies. And one thing we must have in mind is there is no VAT, no value-added tax in Timor-Leste. So, and also Timor-Leste only has 2 tax treaties with Australia and also concerning the Timor Sea oil exploration and Portugal. As far as I know, there is a treatise ongoing with the United States, but I think, and I'm almost pretty sure it was still not publicized. In terms of personal taxation, the regime is very soft too. So it's based on the residence of the individual. An individual is resident in Timor-Leste if he's present for more than 183 days in Timor, then you are taxed. The rates, you are only taxed if your earnings exceed $500. $500 is the currency that is available now in Timor, American dollar. And if all earnings above 500 are taxable, above they are not taxable. Other interesting and very quick facts: no capital duty, no stamp duty on concerns to personal taxation, no capital acquisitions tax, no real property tax, no inheritance tax, no net wealth tax, social security rate at 4%, and no VAT, no value-added tax for individuals also. Well, after somehow a little bit boring facts concerning tax, let's go for a little bit more interesting topics concerning investment in incentives. That's what Trade Invest agency does. So if you want to benefit from these kind of incentives, a key principle in Trade Invest is that foreign investors are granted the same level of protection as national investors. This is access to courts, right to rent property from state, import of capital goods and equipment, access to credit, and employment of foreign workers, because the agency can help you have working visas easily for foreigners. In terms of eligibility, for a foreign investor, if he wants to benefit from these incentives, must invest at least $500,000. A business plan that goes beyond $500,000 is eligible for incentives from Trade Invest. And if he wishes to do a joint venture with the national company, then it's only $250,000. What kind of investments, of incentives? Just in a nutshell, tax incentives 100% exemption from income tax, sales tax, and service tax for 8 years usually. So this is a very good incentive. Customs incentives also 100% exemption on import duties. Special benefits for investors, for example, renting state-owned property for 25 to 100 years and undertaking your business plan on that parcel of land. And the kind of exemptions also alternate or have different regimes concerning the area inside the Timor-Leste island. So closer to Dili or more distant to Dili, it changes the amount of the incentives that the state will bestow to you. Concerning the incentive application process, it's pretty simple, just submission of some standard documents, forms, some photocopies of passports, power of attorneys, and company registration. After receiving the request, the Trade Invest Agency will be responsible about talking with the government and dealing with the government on helping you just concretizing your business plan. And there are many business plans that are ongoing right now in Timor-Leste. We will talk about in what fields a little bit later. This is an interesting and also very important topic, land ownership, because as Timor-Leste conquered its independence in 2002, the land regime is very strict right now. So Timorese land is only for Timorese. A foreigner cannot buy land in Timor right now. It's a constitutional imperative, but for incentivizing external investors, there is some softening on this regime. So a foreign legal citizen and legal entity, they cannot buy property, state property, neither private property, but they can lease. They can lease property. Leasing government land is done through usually a special investment agreement with the state that is processed through this Trade Invest Agency. So Trade Invest will always be your best friend if you are an investor in Timor-Leste, because there is all the know-how, the legal expertise, and the political connections with the state. To find and apply for land is not still very easy because there are still no real estate agents in Timor-Leste. You have to check maybe by direct observation or simply by Googling maps and find a targeted place and see with the state whether it is public or private. Once some land has been identified, you may submit an application in the Land and Property Department and you will get quick feedback. Important to know also access to electricity. There is one electricity company here, Eletricidade de Timor-Leste, and it's pretty easy to have access to electricity and to water too. If you are an investor through the special investment agreement, you can make a good deal with the state concerning maybe sometimes free water supply. Now, I want to talk about very quickly about permitted economic activities, because there is all economic activities here are permitted except those that are forbidden. So there is a negative list of forbidden activities, such as criminal activities, activities related to environmental areas, that can offend traditional customs, funeral services, and then allowed activities, but which are only restricted to a small participation by the investor or shares, all publicized on this negative list. For example, related to communication services, activities of publishing books, newspapers, air transportation, air carriers, gambling, insurance activities. And then what kind of business has grown in Timor on the last 20 years of independence. It's a very recent country and very, very exciting in terms of business opportunities, because everything is pretty much starting from scratch, and a new investor almost always is a pioneer. So you can bring all the good practices from Europe and from United States and from business making in Asia, and if you implement them well here, then you are surely a new leader. In terms of agriculture, for example, 64% of working adults work in agriculture, mainly in coffee and rice fields. Coffee is a very exciting business in Timor. It's an exquisite product here, and it's exported now worldwide. There are some companies of coffee, and it's very beautiful to see the landscape, the coffee landscapes in the Timorese mountains. Very beautiful mountains, very beautiful landscapes. Then livestock, there's potential to invest in livestock, including pig and poultry, including egg production. And having introduced quality certificates, Timor-Leste now is a member of the World Organization for Animal Health. And also on what concerns to forestry, there's a lot of bamboo production and coconut tree production, coconut oil, coconut milk, coconut water. Those are all possibilities that are still not very exploited, because they all are very imported from Indonesia still. And there we are fond of new pioneers on these areas here. On what concerns to fishing and aquaculture, we have a lot of marine resources, and I can say the most beautiful underwaters in the world, with coral reefs that some people say are not even seen in Australia, or the most beautiful underwater reefs in this zone. On what concerns to processing industry, the government supports the development of processing and manufacturing industries also. Our areas of growth include food production, construction materials, marble and cements. There are a lot of geological opportunities here, and the state is always, as far as I know, willing to receive more business plans and more proposals in this area. Tourism is a must. The landscape is beautiful. The roads are being improved from year to year. Also roads and bridges, water transportations, everything is being improved every year that passes. Air transport, telecommunications. We are waiting for a new the first underwater internet connection. It's still satellite. Water and sanitation, electricity are in need of new investors, and there is market for that. Just to finish, just to explain you in a nutshell how to start a business. First, you go for the business registration. It's pretty easy on our entity, set of entity. You establish a legal entity and you submit an application in order to have a registration certificate, and then you must do the tax registration with the tax authorities, and it's issued by this survey. Also, they will issue a TIN number, then a general business license concerning what kind of areas do you want to invest in, and then maybe in some specific areas like oil and gas, a sector license. The general required documents are just some standardized documents, also like company profile, a firm, the shareholders' information, identification card, the acts of deliberation, and power of attorney. Well, the following documents will be issued by survey: registration certificate, certificate of business, authorization to conduct the activity, and a business license. Then you are ready to go. If you go through Trade Invest, all these procedures will be so much easier rather than if you are an orphan by yourself. So Trade Invest will be basically your father, who will process you and help you with dealing with governmental entities. Types of business entities: also company with joint stock, enterprise of company or company with single shareholder with limited liability, permanent representation, just a small branch, or limited liability. On what concerns to foreign exchange, Timor-Leste, as I said, local currency is the US dollar. And financial institutions, there are some banking institutions like BNU that has a partnership with the main Portuguese bank, Caixa Geral, Bank Mandiri from Indonesia, BRI, BCTL, state-owned commercial bank, two insurance companies, three currency exchange bureaus, and 9 money transfers operators. Now, this is the one of the hotspots of Timor also, of which everybody talks about, is oil and gas, of course. There has been lots of oil exploitation with Australia on the last 10 to 15 years, and new oil reserves are being found as decades pass. Here is just a quick map for you just to understand who owns the oil in the Timor Sea. Really, this is important to know. So we have Timor-Leste on that lighter yellow area. It's 100% Timor-Leste. But then all the oil fields that have been found so far are mainly on this joint petroleum development, 90% Timor-Leste, 10% Australian. So the main oil reservoirs are Bayou Undan, Buffalo, Kakatua, Sunrise, also 50-50 with Australia. And now with the new possibilities of carbon trapping, I think there is a good possibility here and good outlook on this area. I would like to thank you very much. In a nutshell, this is what I can say in 20 minutes about Timor. Please feel free to ask me anything you want. As far as I know, and I have it handy in my mind. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Sebastian, for a very interesting presentation. I'm sure the audience found it interesting as well. Let me see if we have any questions from the audience. Okay, so there's a question to you, Sebastian, from Raymond, our president. The question is, where and which countries are foreign investment in Timor-Leste coming from in recent years? And in which sectors are these focused?
Countries of investors. Well, mainly Indonesian, as far as I'm concerned now, as far as I've seen, many Indonesian investors from Singapore also now on the new ports, in the port industry, port and shipyard industry. So mainly in Asian countries and Australian too, because of the proximity. Also Japan, because of automobile industry. I could say most vehicles in Timor right now, new vehicles, are Japanese, and South Korean too. So the Asians were very smart on grabbing these markets, on catching these markets, and mainly Singapore, Japan, Korea, Indonesia, and of course we have cooperations also with GIZ, Germany, and the United States too.
Okay, so another question from Nitin to Sebastian as well. Timor-Leste sounds that it has a beautiful landscape with many industries operating in the country. What guidelines or measures to protect the environment?
Yes, so there are environmental laws, the basic environmental law issued by the government some years ago. Every business plan here must be processed through many statal entities. One of those entities are the main governmental environmental entities, which will have to screen thoroughly your business plan and see if it complies with the environmental laws that are pretty much based on European practices and standards. Then it's not a big drawback of these laws, that they are not very restrictive like in other countries, but of course there are limitations, but always exploitation of crops, coffee, bamboo, and traditional Timorese goods is pretty much welcomed. All the practices that can somehow destroy landscape and alter the marine resources and rivers and the seabed will be furtherly controlled.
So Nitin also asked further questions. It said, are these environmental laws more restrictive to foreign investors, or are all people treated equally?
No, all people are treated equally. All people are treated equally. The laws are applicable on all investments that are undertaken inside Timor-Leste, whether they are of Timorese or foreign incentive.
Thank you. I do have a question for Dr. Jan. You mentioned New Silk Road area in Poland. Are there a lot of Chinese investors in the area?
For that question. Right now, not so many, but we observe an increasing Chinese investment movement in Poland. Also in this area, maybe it is not as visible as in other parts of the world, but anyway. Yes, but you have to bear in mind that the New Silk Road is still a project that has not been implemented, and it's more like a plan than under construction right now. But it's for sure it is interesting in terms of trade between Asia and Europe.
Thank you. One more question for Sebastião, if you don't mind.
Yes, please.
You seem to have a lot of questions.
Mm-hmm.
So how easy or difficult it is for foreigners, for investors, to move funds in and out of Timor-Leste?
Well, in terms of funds, I have here some information concerning that. I had something prepared. Let me just. So there is a guarantee by when you apply through Trade Invest. There is an easement in terms of moving funds if you apply through Trade Invest. So that's in a way to incentivize incentivize external investment. If you give me just 20 seconds, I might have it here handy for you. Let me just. Because here I was looking for this because it has a specific law which could answer with all the specificities to your question, but I don't find it here. But there is a special regime through Trade Invest for the movement of funds in and out of Timor-Leste. So for further information, everything is on the Trade Invest website. It's very, very user-friendly.
Thank you. We have actually more questions from the audience. From Henning to Marius. I'm not sure which one of you is Marius. What are the average growth in Poland? Okay, so it's up to them. For the last 10 years.
Well, in the last years, the average growth, meaning the GDP growth, it was varying, but from 3 up to more or less to 4% a year. Yeah.
Thank you. Again, from Henning to Sebastião, Timor-Leste seems like a tax paradise. What are the sources of income for the government? Can you say something about the political stability of Timor-Leste and the rule of law? If, for example, the courts.
Yes. So the constitution is pretty recent. All the laws are being built year by year. In terms of political stability, it's a pretty stable country. The president and the prime ministers are still from the veteran generation, those who fought with arms for their independence from Indonesia. In terms of government income, from now start to build the foundations of a solid tax regime in terms of social security and in terms of maybe VAT in the future. But so it's a beginning country. It's a child country. It's a child with many opportunities, and well, it's the oil fields guarantee some funds every year, and they guarantee the stability, the political and political independence and political stability.
Well, thank you. Is there any more questions from the audience? If not, I think I can wrap this up. Well, okay. I hope you have enjoyed today's webinar. Okay, so this is the last session in our foreign investment webinar series. And the next legal lawyers webinar will be in the series of commercial litigations in both Asia and Europe jurisdictions. And we will be announcing the time and the speakers for our first webinar on commercial litigation very soon. Before we finish, I would like to announce that the League of Lawyers has launched its first and second country guide ebooks on foreign direct investment and company law, with contributions from several members and edited by our President, Raymond Ma, and our Vice President, Nitin Shuran. Everyone at the League of Lawyers is very proud of these publications, and we hope they are an interesting read and a helpful resource to you all. If you are interested in receiving a copy of the ebook, you can download it from our website. Now, ladies and gentlemen, finally, we've come to the end part of our webinar. I would like to say thanks again to our esteemed speakers, Dr. Jan Muczynski and Mr. Sebastian Bernay, for your informative and interesting presentations. A big thanks to the League of Lawyers and support from Mara and Kwai to make today's session successful. And also, I would like to say thanks to the audience for your active participation. Hopefully, the presentation will be beneficial for everyone. Thank you for your attention, and I wish you a good rest of the week. Hope to see you again at our next session. Goodbye.